What if the darkness following you isn't an accident, but a mirror you are unknowingly holding up to the universe? We believe we are victims of our circumstances, yet we ignore the silent frequency we radiate into the void every single hour. Why does the same tragedy keep wearing different masks in your life? Are you actually seeking a way out? Or has your soul become addicted to the familiar gravity of your own suffering? Is it possible that love isn't an emotion you find, but a vibration you become, one that the ego is terrified? Today, we aren't talking about positive thinking. We are talking about a radical shift in your internal signal. We are going to find out why you are still tuned into the frequency, and how to finally stop feeding the shadows that you claim to hate. The entropy of the shadow, why the mind craves the dark we claim we want to be happy. We spend our days chasing the light, yet we often find ourselves strangely at home in the darkness. Have you ever noticed how a bad mood feels like a heavy, familiar blanket? There is a seductive gravity in our suffering, a silent rhythm in our anxiety that feels safer than the unpredictable heights of joy. Why do we return to the same bitter thoughts, a moth to a dying flame? This is the psychological paradox of the comfort of the abyss. To the ego, darkness is a fortress. When you are in a state of negative resonance, the world is predictable. You expect disappointment, so you are never surprised. You anticipate betrayal, so you are never truly vulnerable. We mistake this numbness for protection. We have convinced ourselves that as long as we stay in the shadows, the sun cannot burn us. But look closer at the mechanism. Inside your brain, the reticular activating system acts as a relentless gatekeeper. It's a filter that decides which parts of reality you are allowed to see. When you tune your internal dial to the frequency of lack or fear, your biology obeys. It begins to scan the horizon only for decay. It highlights every slight, every failure, and every tragedy, while the beauty of the world becomes invisible static. You aren't just observing a dark world. You are physically editing out the light to maintain the integrity of your own sorrow. Is it possible that you invite chaos into your life simply because you are afraid of the quiet responsibility of being happy? Happiness is a terrifying risk. Unlike the shadow, which asks nothing of you but your surrender, joins your presence. It requires you to drop your guard and admit that life is worth the pain of losing it. To live in the light is to stand naked before the universe. Most of us aren't ready for that kind of exposure. We would rather be about how terrible life is than be happy and have no one to blame for our heartbeat. We call it bad luck. We call it destiny. But in the quiet hours of the dusk, who is the one selecting the frequency? If you are one holding the filter, then you are the one choosing the prison. We have deconstructed the safety of our own cages. We have seen how the mind uses entropy to avoid the labor of love. But if the darkness is a choice, what happens when we decide to stop choosing it? If the ego finds its identity in the struggle, who are you without the fight? The shadow is comfortable, but it is a slow death. It is a lingering in the hallway because you are afraid of what is behind the door. But the hallway is narrowing. The air is growing thin. We have looked into the abyss of the shadow. Now we must find the courage to look into the sun, because the real shift isn't about feeling better. It's about becoming something that the darkness can no longer recognize. The frequency is beginning to tremble. And the most radical act of rebellion is just a heartbeat away. The solar heart. Love is an act of existential defiance. If the shadow is a fortress of safety, then love is the act of tearing down the walls while the storm is still raging. We have been taught to think of love as a fleeting emotion, a chemical accident that happens to us. But what if love, actually a deliberate frequency? What if it is the only state of being that refuses to bow to the cold logic of the grave? Consider the transcendental shift. Most of us live on the frequency of the ghost, a state of perpetual lack. We move through the world looking for what is missing. We seek to get love, to obtain peace, to win respect. We are like starving beggars at a feast, focused on our empty plates that we never taste the bread. This is the frequency of decay. It is the belief that because we are mortal, we must hoard, protect, and fear. But Baruch Spinoza spoke of a different power, amor dei intellectualis, a love born not of desire, but of a deep, crystalline understanding of reality. To Spinoza, love was the increase of one's power to exist. When you shift your internal dial from lack to abundance, you are not just changing your mood. You are committing an act of existential defiance. You are choosing to be a solar heart, a source of light that shines because it is its nature to shine, not because it expects a reflection. Why do we wait for the world to be perfect before we allow ourselves to radiate? Viktor Frankl, standing in the gray mud of the abyss, discovered that everything can be taken from a person except the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude. He realized that love is the ultimate goal to which man can aspire. Not love as a romantic sentiment, but love as a defiant anchor in the eternal. In the midst of death, love becomes a timeless presence. It is the only part of the human experience that does not whisper of the end. The shadow tells you that you are a finite creature in a hostile universe. The solar heart knows that you are the universe experiencing itself through the lens of warmth. This is the great paradox. The more you give away, the more you become. The ego screams that this is impossible. It warns you that you will be depleted, exhausted, and forgotten. But have you ever noticed that the sun does not ask if its light is being used? It simply pours itself out, and in doing so, it defines the very meaning of a day. To live in love is to outrun the shadow of the grave, not by living longer, but by living in a dimension where time has no grip. When you move from the frequency of the ghost to the frequency of the sun, your existence ceases to be a slow decay. It becomes a radiant broadcast. But can you endure the silence that follows this realization? To be a source of light means you no longer have the luxury of blame. You can no longer point to the darkness of others to justify your own coldness. Are you ready to stop being a victim of the shadows and start being the reason they vanish? We have traveled from the comfort of the abyss to the terrifying brilliance of the heart. We have seen that the frequency we choose is the world we inhabit. The transition is nearly complete. The old world is fading, and the dial is in your hand. But as the light grows stronger, a final question remains. One that logic cannot answer and words cannot reach. The sun is rising within you, and what you choose to illuminate next will change everything.